We have a jam-packed video full of tons of information today, including lots of offseason trade and UFA speculation. In today's video, we're talking about the Ottawa Senators. Owner Michael Andlauer had some pretty big comments regarding the rumors regarding Drake Batherson recently. We'll address that, plus some other Sens updates and news from the owner speaking to the media. Plus, we also have trade updates on the Vancouver Canucks, including a pretty big quote from one of the Canucks reporters regarding what other teams feel that the Canucks are doing and some moves they could make. They are linked to a player in Minnesota as well, so we'll discuss the possibility of Vancouver, Minnesota making a trade. Plus, we have rumors around the Dallas Stars. Of course, they fired Peter Deboer, but could there be much more coming after that? We have some updates on the Avalanche, the latest on the UFA front, on the Mitch Marner and Brad Marchand sweepstakes that are going to be coming up here in free agency. We have some more coaching updates, including some assistant coaching news, some signings, and of course, we got Game 2 tonight in the Stanley Cup Final. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a jam-packed video with all kinds of information and speculation here tonight. If there's certain updates that you're more interested in others, keep in mind there is timestamps below in the pinned comment if you want to kind of, focus more on certain areas of the video. But let's get started first with kind of a little bit quick preview here. Game 2 tonight, the Stanley Cup Final, Edmonton versus Florida. Of course, the Oilers took Game 1 in overtime. It was a really entertaining game, very closely, tightly contested. What will happen tonight? I would suspect that we're probably going to see, at least I would think, maybe a little bit more of a tighter defensive game. With the first game being a 4-3 win, I wouldn't be surprised if the scoring tonight's a little bit lower. We'll have to wait and see how things go, of course, but the Oilers have won 5 straight games now. They certainly have their swagger. They're certainly doing well, and we'll see if they can keep things going. Obviously, taking a 2-0 lead in the final would be massive for the Oilers. The Panthers, I'm sure, don't want to see that happen. Going back home with a 1-1 tied series would be a lot more preferable than being down. So I suspect we'll get a good effort and a good pushback tonight from Florida. Can Edmonton withstand that? Can Skinner outduel Bobrovsky again? That's going to be a big battle to watch here as well. No lineup changes that we're aware of at this time for either lineup. AJ Greer has a possibility of returning to Florida's lineup when they get home for Game 3. So we'll see how things go and recap the game later once it's completed. All kinds of other information here today. We're going to focus a bunch of coaching updates here first and some stuff along the way. First, let's start with the Dallas Stars. Of course, we got word this morning that they've fired head coach Peter Deboer. As we talked about here a couple of times since the incident, we'll call it, at Game 5 in the Western Conference Final, where Peter Deboer yanked Oettinger early. I don't think it was the fact that he was yanked after 2 goals on 2 shots. I know Jim Nill addressed the media this afternoon after the announcement came that Deboer was let go. And it wasn't so much the fact that he pulled the goalie, it's how it was handled and a lot of the remarks that were made to the media afterwards that really sealed his fate. Of course, we know Deboer, called a timeout, yanked a goalie, but the goalie didn't even know. Oettinger was going back to his net. It's really a lot about how it was handled. He kind of just lost his mind there. I'm surprised if Deboer didn't want to plead temporary insanity or something. Just to me, I don't understand what he was doing, but he does have a history of not being the greatest with goalies. I'm not sure what he was thinking in this regard, but then he doubled down on everything in the media afterwards and really, to me, just kind of put Jake Oettinger under the bus. Then he backed him up and he ran him over again and basically laid the blame at his feet. And I think it's a team sport, and I think there was a lot more to it than Jake Oettinger that cost them that series. And I think Jake Oettinger played a really big role in even getting them there. So they felt it was time for a new voice. So Pete Deboer, like I said, he's a good coach in some ways and has had a lot of great success, but he seems to have a pretty short shelf life, and everywhere he goes, he only lasts for about 3 years. So I guess his time was up. We know there was lots of other things that came up through the exit meetings that we're not really quite sure of on the details, but I know there was reports that other players outside of Oettinger had expressed that they were not happy with how certain things were handled during the playoffs and in that series particular. We don't know exactly what those things were, but obviously it led to the team making a tough decision. It took several days, and of course now all the coach vacancies are gone. So he doesn't really have an opportunity to go right back to work like he's done pretty much every other time he's been fired here in the NHL. So we'll see. There's not too many coaches that get as many opportunities as he's had. I think the only coach that's had more is his good buddy Paul Maurice. But of course, both both long-time coaches. I'm sure at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if Deboer resurfaces. I just don't know when and where that's going to be, because there's no real obvious solutions to that right now. One other update on Dallas, which we'll talk about here quickly. Jeff Merrick, of course, well-connected reporter / insider, whatever you want to call him. He made comments saying that Peter Deboer might actually only be the first domino here, that the organization may make what he referred to as ruthless decisions coming up to improve the team. So we don't know exactly what that means. We've heard rumblings about Jason Robertson possibly being available for trade. 1 year left on a contract, $7.75 million. He'll be RFA for one more year after that. But I mean, guys like Robertson don't come along easily. You know, he had multiple 40-goal seasons, multiple 80-point seasons, hit 100 points once. He's only 25. He's got good size, skates well. Doesn't play physical for his size, but still, there's so much to like about his game that there'd be a lot of teams interested if he were available for trade, no doubt. But obviously his roles changed a bit since Rantanen was acquired, but I don't know. I mean, is he the guy that needs to go? And what exactly is Merrick hinting at here with these ruthless decisions? Obviously, with Jim Nill being involved with the owner, being allowed to fire the coach, I don't see there being a change in general manager. The fact that Ottinger was thrown under the bus and everything, I don't really see them trading Ottinger either. So who would they move? Like, what would the ruthless thing be? Jim Nill did say that he definitely wants to bring back Jamie Benn. I mean, moving on from your captain, who's a UFA, would be bold. But they have several other UFAs that are, interesting here, like Duchesne. Maybe he can't come back. They apparently would like to bring back Mikael Granlund, but that's going to be challenging. The big part of all this too is not only is it the way they lost and how things were handled by Deboer, but they only have $5 million in cap space and a lot of unrestricted free agents. They get some money tied up in a couple bad contracts on the blue line. And, well, they do need to make some changes, no doubt. They can't get over that hump in the Western Final, but they're still a stronger team than a lot of teams would love to be, the Dallas Stars. So I'm not sure what those ruthless decisions that might be coming are. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss that further. Lots more to talk about here, though. We'll stick with the coaching cycle here for a few more quick tidbits. The Seattle Kraken today confirmed that new head coach Lane Lambert has been reviewing and analyzing his coaching staff, and they've decided that they're moving on, essentially firing assistant coaches Dave Lowry and goalie coach Steve Briere. A little bit of a surprise by many for Steve Briere. Apparently he did a lot of good work with Joey Daccord as the goalie coach. I mean, at the same time, Philip Grubauer has been a mess the whole time he's been there. I'm not sure if he's getting the blame for that or what, but a couple of assistant coaches out in Seattle, while Lambert will have a little bit more opportunity to round out his staff with guys that he picks, I guess. The Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, lost one of their assistants in that same guy. Lane Lambert was a Leaf assistant last year running the PK. Of course, is now the head coach in Seattle, so they had an opening on their bench, and they've hired former Red Wing head coach and former Lightning assistant Derek Lalonde. So Newsy Lalonde back in the NHL after a brief exit out, will be returning to the Toronto Maple Leafs as an assistant coach. So a lot of people say that he should be a good fit under Craig Berube as an assistant there. Like Lambert, he's known for being a little bit more of a defensive coach. He'll probably take over running the penalty kill, which Lambert looked after last year, would be my guess. But we'll see if he'll be a good fit there. I mean, he does have a fair bit of experience on, from his time in, a variety of places, but in the NHL with Tampa and Detroit. So see how it goes there. And the Lightning, of course, had an opening as well. They've hired Dan Heinold, of course, former player and coach, as an assistant coach to take over the vacant spot on the Tampa bench. And the Lightning have also signed Max Crozier to a 3-year contract at league minimum, and it's a one-way deal in years 2 and 3. Avalanche forward Logan O'Connor had successful hip surgery as well. That's a big blow, big recovery. He's going to be out for about 6 months. So he most likely won't be able to be there for I'm going to guess probably first 2 months of the season. I mean, it could be a little bit sooner than that. Probably fair to say he misses October for sure, and probably a decent chunk of November. Depending on how things go, could be longer or shorter from there. But big recovery up ahead here for Logan O'Connor. Capitals forward, I guess we'll still refer to him that until he announces his retirement, but TJ Oshie, who has an announcement coming Monday, was expected to announce his retirement, and maybe that's still going to be the case, but it is also been noted that from the Russian Machine Never Breaks website, that who covers the Capitals, that Oshie is set to debut a documentary about his dad. Actually, it's called Coach, and Coach was his dad's nickname because he was a longtime coach himself. And of course, if you follow the Capitals, or if you remember when they won the Cup in 2018, it was very emotional. His father had been battling Alzheimer's for some time. And anyways, he's made a documentary outlining and detailing the struggles with that. So that should be interesting to watch for sure. And good to see Oshie. I'm sure he's doing this mostly to kind of spread awareness and kind of honor his father's legacy here a little bit as well. Now, a bunch of other things here today. Let's start with a couple of UFA rumors, and then we'll get into the trade stuff. The two main players we want to look at as far as unrestricted free agents, or at least we're expecting them to make it there, is Mitch Marner and Brad Marchand. A quick update on Marner. Don't really have any new intel from NHL reporters or insiders to really add to that saga, but Cool Bet, which is one of the betting sites, of course, they have a sponsorship with Puckpedia, and they put out their new updated odds for where Marner is going to end up. Now, I'm not sure exactly. They must research and try to get some inside intel to determine this, but right now they have the highest odds and the best odds at plus 450 for him going to the Los Angeles Kings. So right now, according to Cool Bet, that is the leading contender for Mitch Marner is Los Angeles. Now, Vegas Golden Knights are right behind him at plus 475. We've got the Toronto Maple Leafs are third at plus 600. The Carolina Hurricanes are fourth at plus 650. And the Utah Mammoth are fifth with plus 750. So some interesting teams there. They're mostly teams that we've all talked about at some point in the past here regarding potential landing spots for Marner based on what we think makes sense and what the rumors are from insiders are indicating that they might be interested or that he might be interested in as well. So that's the latest on Mitch Marner. When it comes to Brad Marchand, NHL insider and former player Nick Kyprios' latest article indicates that he feels, based on what he's heard and the intel that's he's been able to obtain, that Brad Marchand is he's not saying that he's very likely to end up in Toronto, but he says the odds of the Leafs getting Brad Marchand are drastically higher than them getting Sam Bennett. Of course, they both play together right now in Florida. They're both pending unrestricted free agents. They're both the type of player that I think the Leafs are missing. So it would not be surprising for the Maple Leafs if they're able to have conversations with one or both of them to see if there's a fit and if they can sign either one. I know there's some people out there that think that Bennett is most likely going to stay in Florida, and I think the odds are probably most favorable for that scenario. But I know Pierre LeBrun was reporting today that Bennett and the Panthers, at least at this point in time, are not close on a contract. He said there are teams out there he believes that are willing to offer him $10 million a year. And obviously, Florida is not there. They know about the, clearly using the no state tax advantage. I don't know what exactly he's looking for. Maybe it's a combination of money. Maybe it's term. Maybe it's trade protection. We don't really know what exactly the breakdown is between Bennett and Florida. But for right now, at least, they're not close. So we'll have to see where it goes. And I have no doubt, based on how he's played in these playoffs, that he will get $10 million on the open market. Now, should a team do that? You could say maybe not. I mean, Bennett's a great player, but it's really tough to justify that kind of money when you look at the overall aspects of his game and what his normal regular season production is like. But the problem is for teams trying to pay him less is he has a lot of leverage because he gets it done when it matters the most, which is what teams are missing. He knows for a lot of teams he'd be like a wild card missing ingredient type. And if a team is close to being a cup contender and you can add that style of play from Bennett, not only do you get the benefit that he's on your team, you get the benefit that he's on your team and you don't have to play against him. I mean, look how hard he is to play against. Look how he injures players. Look how the antics you get from him. You don't have to deal with that crap because he's on your side. You might have to pay a premium just to keep him from being your opponent. So at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But I think the odds are still better that Bennett stays in Florida than he goes anywhere else. But LeBrun says as of right now, they're not close. Kyprios is saying there's a much greater chance Marchand lands in Toronto compared to Bennett. I would agree with that take, but again, how likely is it? We don't know. Marchand did speak to Elliot Friedman just 1 or 2 days ago for a sit-down interview that he did for Sportsnet, and he made it known that he's pretty much open to anything. There's nothing that he's willing to say is completely out of the question going into free agency. But with the number that he's going to be able to command as a free agent, it's pretty unlikely that Marchand can remain to be a Panther moving forward. But I think he would be interested in that if they want to get creative and figure out a way that works for everybody. Now, a bunch of other stuff when it comes to trades. Let's get on first with the Minnesota Wild. We know the Minnesota Wild are actively shopping Marco Rossi. We've heard that from enough sources. Essentially, Chris Johnson of TSN and The Athletic is saying that the thing with Rossi is that the Wild and him as a player do not share a vision of what his next contract should look like. So that's why a trade is more likely, and even citing the fact that if they take too long to get it done, that he could be a prime option for an offer sheet. Because if he knows he's not getting anywhere near what he wants in Minnesota, we know their cap situation, like a lot of teams, could be pretty tight, especially if they make some other moves first, and they could be in a predicament where, that they have no choice but to face that. And if they do and he accepts it, they're going to get the compensation from that rather than what they might be able to negotiate in a trade. It just, it's hard to say, right? So ultimately, Rossi and the Wild are definitely at odds. Now, there's Vancouver media who claim that the Vancouver Canucks are very high on Marco Rossi and would be very interested in acquiring the young centerman from the Minnesota Wild. Now, a couple other things too is, of course, we know the general manager for the Canucks is Jim Rutherford. We know the general manager for the Minnesota Wild is Billy Guerin. Both former Penguins. Billy Guerin was an assistant general manager for quite a stretch under Rutherford's time there. Know each other very well. Not to say that has to be the case to work out a deal, or that he's going to give them any kind of favors or discounts or anything like that. But we know that GMs who know each other and have better relationships and get along well also tend to have more discussions that can kind of lead to relationships do play a role, I believe, in how some of these deals get kind of consummated. So we'll see what happens, but the Canucks are definitely looking for a number 2 center. We know that, and he certainly fits the bill. Now, of course, we know that the Minnesota Wild would probably want a different kind of player in return, not even necessarily a forward per se. Now, the Canucks have a little bit more depth in goaltending and on the back end. So, for example, guys like, some other defensemen or goalie like Demko could be what a team looks for. Now, does that make sense for Minnesota? Not necessarily. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of deal they might try to work out. It might have to be another player. I'm not sure exactly who that could be or what the deal could be, but we know that the Canucks have some balls in the air here, but that's probably not necessarily something that Minnesota is going to want. Now, another piece of Canucks business is we know that there's other things they're probably going to be looking at doing, but a big thing for them is changing the culture. We know how drama-filled last season was, and they need to move on from that. Now Jeff Merrick also kind of touched on the some of the Canucks stuff. He actually appeared on one of the Canucks-based podcasts here. I believe it was Sakaris and Price, if I'm not mistaken. He was making comments how Utah is ready to make a big, bold move this year. They're definitely going to be a team to watch. And he says, based on his intel, they definitely would like to shore up goaltending. And he was wondering about the possibility of Demko maybe being a target for them. We know that season ticket holders got a big promotional update, and Pettersson and Demko were not on the team graphic like a lot of the other top players were, which was definitely interesting to say the least. So leading people to wonder if they're not overly confident right now that those guys are going to be Canucks going into next year. We know Demko's had all the injuries and whatnot. He's got 1 year left on his contract. But, the belief is that from Merrick that Utah is definitely going to be looking for a goalie upgrade, and he wonders if Demko might be a player. Now, he also does confirm that he's heard similar things that other reporters have said, that the 4th overall pick may be in play. It could be in a case where they're willing to move down and try to get extra assets. It could be a case where they may consider moving the pick completely outright for a roster player who can help them today. They have a ton of young talent, and they have a ton of first-round talent that's not even actively on the roster yet. So they have the ability to be selective here with what they do with this pick. And they were very fortunate in the draft lottery to move up all the way to 4 and get that 10 spot increase, which was massive for them. So, if they're looking for goalie upgrades, could Demko be involved? And could that 4th overall pick be something that Vancouver ends up trying to zone in on? We'll have to wait and see on that front, but that's a very interesting concept to look at. And one last thing with the Canucks too. On the Donnie and Daly show, they were referencing information from Patrick Johnston. Johnston had quite a quote from one of his sources, kind of outlining what they believe the Canucks were looking to do this year. And it says that Canucks management is looking to get rid of the emotionally soft, diva drama type, cancerous players without doing any kind of a traditional rebuild. Isn't that a jaw-dropping statement? Emotionally soft, diva drama type, cancerous players. Wow. Now, we know the whole Pedersen Miller stuff, but there's obviously a lot more going on in that dressing room and around that team that we ever knew of. That's pretty crazy. So I think it's fair to say that the Canucks are going to be busy and active, and not only trying to improve the team, but they need to change the culture. There's no doubt. So we'll see what happens. Could a player like Demko be a player for Utah? Could there be any way the Canucks get a pick like that in return? Obviously, like I said, they're also linked to Marco Rossi right now. Lots of questions about the future of Demko and Pedersen. It's going to be a very interesting time in Vancouver here. No doubt about it. There's also reports from Frank Zaravalli. He's indicating that he's hearing a lot of rumblings that the Colorado Avalanche may be having some conversations around the availability of defenseman Sam Girard. We know the Avalanche, like a team like Dallas, have a very low amount of cap space to work with, and they have some important pieces that they need to replace. Trading a defenseman, whether it's Girard or Manson or one of those guys, makes a lot of sense. I think it's time that they have to, unfortunately, kind of have to cut ties with somebody to free up some additional space here. So, he's a smaller defenseman, but a terrific skater, pretty good puck mover. There's, obviously some aspects to his game, especially in the playoffs, that might be a little bit less desirable, but there's lots to like as well. He can certainly be a great play driver, good puck mover, great skater, and certainly help a team log some minutes. Has gained a lot of good experience during his time with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, Ottawa Senators owner Michael Landauer was, which should not surprise you if you're familiar with him, was kind of pretty outspoken today and said some things that kind of raised some eyebrows. But for the most part, everything he had to say was very positive. But we'll get into that here. But the Ottawa Senators were having an alumni golf tournament today, which also was, I believe, a fundraiser too. And he comes over to speak to the media, and it just was wired. He starts off by calling out reporter Bruce Garriock. Of course, Bruce Garriock works for TSN, but mostly is a writer for the Ottawa Sun, makes appearances on TSN, but Post Media, who owns the newspaper, is his primary employer. Goes on, he comes to the media and he's like looking for Bruce, and he's like, oh, Bruce isn't here. And they're like, oh, why isn't Bruce here? And he said, oh, because he's making false claims. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, well, you guys have probably seen it. Multiple days in a row this past week, he's writing articles apparently saying that we're trading Drake Batherson. And he's like, that is totally false. He's like, here we are at the draft combine at Buffalo this past week, and then, we're getting all this stuff being sent to us going, what's going on here? He's like, if that happened just once, it's one thing, but, it was reported on multiple days. And he said, and there's just absolutely nothing to it. So they asked, well, did you speak to Drake? He's like, no, but Steve Staios has, to reassure him that, this is totally false, not the case. They're not looking to shop him. Now, of course, Steve Staios isn't doing his job, though, if he's not listening. And if teams are calling and they're talking potential trades and Batherson's name comes up, well, that's not Steve's fault. And you know what? There's going to be some trades where they may be stupid not to trade him. Generally speaking, would you want to move him? I think they're a better team with him. He's got a unique skill set. I was against moving him, but if you're bringing back like a huge name that makes the team better, you have to look at it. And we know that Steve Staios is not that kind of GM. Like, he's not loyal to anybody. He hasn't been there that long. These are not his drafted, developed players. Like, he'll do what he needs to do to make this team better. He did that at the deadline last year, moving longtime Senator Josh Norris. Sent shockwaves through the dressing room. I don't know that they're ready to do that to that dressing room again with another shock trade to move out a core piece. But yeah, either way, I think after coming out vehemently denying these reports from ownership, I think the Sens probably don't trade him now for sure. Or if they do, they kind of look like, hypocrites in a sense, making a big deal about this when it wasn't really the case. But I think for right now, we can kind of put these Batherson rumors to rest. He also made some other interesting comments as well, saying that the arena down at the new arena potential for LeBreton Flats is moving forward. Didn't have a lot to say on it, but certainly, seemed positive updates on that front. He made a suggestion as well that he's still trying to get the penalty reduced from Gary Bettman, losing a first-round pick, which they have to give up next year at this point if nothing changes. Ultimately said he's prepared if he has to get down on his knees and beg, because it wasn't even his doing and has nothing to do with him or anybody that works there at this point. This was all done prior to the trade and trying to see if there's any way they can lower the punishment. But until that happens, that's hard to say, but they're definitely willing to talk to the league and try, even though that probably won't go too far. But he did say as well, he made another suggestion to Gary Bettman. I thought this part was interesting for the Canadian team, saying that he suggested that they be able to pay their players in Canadian dollars instead of US, would help them kind of have a better grip on their earnings, since they wouldn't be having to deal with the wild currency exchange swings that we get at times. I mean, there are times in the run of a few days even when the value of the Canadian versus US dollar can change a lot, positively or negatively. So clearly it's something that he would like to see them be able to do. But again, that's just a suggestion to the league, not really related to any kind of trade rumors or anything. The main trade rumor around Ottawa is the owner vehemently coming out, calling out Bruce Garriock about that they're not trading Drake Batherson. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, he did make a comment. To me, it sounded like he was taking a shot at the Toronto Maple Leafs. He says that Ottawa is such an accepting city. You don't have to go too far to compare how the media treats their team and their fans. So basically saying how much he loves being the owner in Ottawa and how much he loves the city and the people and the media and how everything goes so much better than the drama that you get sometimes in Leaf Nation. So at least that's my take on that. I could be wrong, but to me, it sounded like to me that he's taking a shot at the Maple Leafs. But Michael Landauer was, he had a big smile on his face, looked like he was in a good mood, but man, was he just slinging them today, absolutely calling people out. I mean, Garriock is known. See, the thing is, too, a lot of reporters and people are rubbed the wrong way by Bruce Garriock. And to be honest, when the previous owner, Eugene Melnyk, ran the team when he was alive, Bruce was like his puppet, and he put out a lot of things through the media. And say what you want. I mean, I know Bruce has got a lot of experience, and if he's told things, he's going to report them. But, I just know a lot of other media members just seem to be rubbed the wrong way by Bruce. Like, I know he's kind of got a reputation for, at least in the past, to not necessarily treating everybody very well. At least I've heard that. I know there was a lot of media that really kind of became enemies with him in a sense. And I know that they were unhappy with how the team used to. He was basically the puppet for Melnyk for the longest time. He wanted anything in the media, it went out through Bruce. So when Bruce, to me, lost a lot of credibility that way because you could tell that whatever he was saying, it was basically Eugene saying it, not him. So where his intel came on Batherson, I don't know. A lot of people are convinced, though. I've seen how the fan base turned on Batherson and are convinced that they're going to trade him, that there's no other way to make upgrades. I'm just like, it's mind-boggling. But obviously the ownership, Einlauer coming out today and saying what he did. Times are different in Ottawa, there's no doubt. They are used to having an outspoken owner, but completely different. Every time Melnyk would open his mouth, there was headlines. Einlauer's following a similar trend, but it's all more in defense of his team, in defense of his players. He said it wasn't fair. They called Drake Batherson and talked to him about these articles and speculation and let him know and reassured him that they're not true and all that. So, yeah. So if you're seeing any more reports, if you've seen them here in recent days about Batherson being in the rumor mill, think again. According to Einlauer, ain't happening. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors. There's lots in there. Dallas, Toronto, Ottawa, Minnesota, Vancouver, Utah. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks, all kinds of speculation. So I think it's time to buckle up. We're going to start seeing things pick up here. Last year during the Stanley Cup final, we saw a few big moves happen. Could it happen again? And then towards the end of the month, it's going to get even crazier. So stay tuned. This is the place to get all your updates. We'll keep you up to date with all the news and rumors around all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.